Don't bother coming home for Christmas, you're pathetic. That's what my father said to me, over the phone in the middle of my workday, right after I'd sent him $1,200 to cover his late rent. For a second I thought I'd misheard him. The man whose bills I'd been paying for the last 2 years, who called me his little miracle whenever he needed a loan, had just called me pathetic. My name is Ava, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized that the people you sacrifice most for are the ones who think you owe them everything? I grew up believing my father was a broken man who needed me. My mom left when I was 13. She said she couldn't live with his bitterness anymore. But I stayed. I stayed because he said he couldn't survive without me. And for years I built my life around that guilt. I got a job right after college. Every paycheck I split, part for me, most for him. Rent, utilities, even his old tuition debt he never repaid. He'd call it temporary help. Temporary became forever. But that day, December 18th, something in his voice was different. He said, "You're just like your mother. Selfish. You think money makes you better than me?" I remember staring at my office monitor, a spreadsheet full of other people's numbers, and realizing I'd become one. Just a number in my father's account of excuses. When I told him I'd already mailed his Christmas gift, a warm coat, because he'd complained about the heating bill, he laughed. "Keep it," he said. "You can wear it when your boyfriend dumps you." Then he hung up. That was the first Christmas I ever spent alone. No phone calls. No, "Merry Christmas, kiddo." Not even a text. I sat by my small apartment window watching snow fall under the streetlight, the city glowing like a world that didn't need me. I kept thinking, if I disappeared, would he even notice? Or would he just wonder why the rent wasn't paid? The silence stretched for days. And then on December 26th my phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. No greeting. No apology. Just, "Rent due January 1st. Utilities too. Don't be late." I stared at that message until my tears dried into something sharper. Not sadness. Not even anger. Resolve. Because in that moment I decided to give him exactly what he'd asked for. He didn't want me to come home? Fine. He didn't want my presence? He wouldn't have my help either. That day I made a quiet promise. A Christmas vow, you could say. Next time my father called me pathetic, he'd finally understand what pathetic really meant. The first week of January came and I didn't send a dime. It felt strange at first, like skipping a step in a lifelong ritual. Usually, the first thing I did after rent day was check my dad's bank balance and transfer whatever he forgot to cover. But this time I did nothing. No payment. No call. No apology. Silence. And silence, I learned, is louder than anger. At first I thought maybe he'd call, maybe even say something like, "Ava, I didn't mean it. I was drunk. I was upset." But days passed. Nothing. Then on January 6th he broke the silence. My phone lit up with a message. "Internet's off. Did you forget?" No hi. No, please. No, thank you. I didn't reply. I just stared at it, my chest heavy but my pulse steady. Later that night another message came. "Power 2. Can you handle it tomorrow?" I could almost hear his tone, that same entitled calm, the assumption that I'd fix everything. I didn't. Instead I scrolled through my photos. There was one from last Christmas. Him smiling with the new shoes I'd bought, the same ones he'd complained were too tight. I remembered how proud I'd been wrapping them, thinking maybe gifts could patch over love that had turned cold. Now I saw it for what it was, bribery disguised as devotion. By the 10th the messages turned sharper. "You think this is funny? You're punishing me? You're acting like a spoiled brat." Spoiled. The irony almost made me laugh. But there's something about withholding help from someone who's always taken it that flips a switch. It shows you who they really are without your saving. By the second week his text slowed. Then stopped. And for the first time in years I started sleeping through the night. No guilt. No late-night budgeting sessions trying to stretch $3,000 across 2 lives. Just quiet. Until one morning I opened my email and saw a new subject line. "Notice of disconnection, final warning." It wasn't mine. It was his, forwarded from his account. He must have forgotten to log out on my old laptop. That's when I saw them. Dozens of unpaid bills, Late fees stacking like layers of debt he used to hide behind my kindness. $348 for electricity. $912 for rent. $57.23 for a phone bill I didn't even use. All unpaid. And for a flicker of a second I felt pity. That old reflex tugged at my heart, the one that said help him, Ava. But then I remembered his words, "You're pathetic. Don't come home." So I closed the laptop. And for the first time I let him live with the consequences he'd built. I thought that would be the end of it. But the thing about men like my father? They don't stop at needing you. They start resenting you for walking away. And by the end of that month, he was about to make sure I paid for leaving. It started small. A voicemail here, a text there. "After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me? Don't forget who raised you. Ungrateful little girl." I ignored him. For 2 weeks I stayed strong. I focused on work, went for runs, cooked for myself, simple, ordinary things I hadn't done without guilt in years. But then he called my job. One Tuesday afternoon my manager asked me to step into her office. She looked uneasy, like she didn't know where to start. Ava, there's a man who keeps calling the front desk. Says he's your father. Claims you're stealing company money to fund your lifestyle." The room tilted. "He what?" She sighed. "We told him that's not appropriate, but he's persistent. If it happens again we might have to file a report." I remember walking back to my desk numb. My coworkers' eyes followed me, not with judgment but curiosity. Like they just realized I had a life outside spreadsheets and deadlines. And that life was messy. That night I called him. Against my better judgment I dialed. He answered on the first ring. "Finally," he said, voice thick with satisfaction. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten who your father was." "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped. "You called my job. Are you insane?" "I called because you left me to rot," he said, his tone suddenly venomous. "No heat, no lights, no food. You owe me." "I owe you nothing," I said quietly. There was a pause, a silence that felt like a storm building. Then he laughed. "You always were dramatic. Like your mother." He said her name like a curse. And something inside me broke open. I hung up, blocked his number, deleted every message, every trace. But the damage was already spreading. 2 days later I got an email, not from him but from my landlord. Someone had anonymously reported that I was subletting my apartment illegally. Another lie. Another attempt to shake me. It didn't work, but it rattled me. Because that meant he knew where I lived. I started locking my door twice, checking my windows, jumping at every noise. The quiet independence I'd fought for was suddenly filled with dread. And then one night around 11:30 I heard it. A knock. Slow. Repetitive. When I looked through the peephole no one was there. But taped to my door was a single piece of paper. "You can't ignore blood, Ava." The handwriting was his. My breath hitched. The hallway was empty. Just the hum of the elevator down the hall. I tore the paper down and stood there shaking, my pulse racing in my ears. That's when I realized, this wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. About him proving he still had power over me, even from the edge of his own downfall. But he didn't know something. He didn't know that I was done being the weak one. And soon, he'd see just how far his pathetic daughter could go when she decided to stop being afraid. Fear has a way of wearing thin. It starts like ice in your veins, cold, sharp, paralyzing, but eventually it melts. And what's left isn't weakness. It's clarity. By mid-February I wasn't scared anymore. I was done. I started small. First I went to my bank and froze the joint account he'd guilt me into keeping, just for emergencies. His emergencies had always been beer runs and overdue bills. I shut it down without warning. Then I changed every password I had. Utilities. Credit cards. Even my Netflix account. Because men like my father don't just live off you, they crawl into the small spaces of your life and nest there. Next I called the property manager of his building, pretending to be a concerned relative. I asked gently if he'd been keeping up with rent. The woman sighed. "He's 4 months behind. We've sent notices." 4 months. That meant even while I'd still been paying he'd been lying. When I hung up I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just smiled. Because now I knew the truth. And knowing meant freedom. I started documenting everything. Every text, voicemail, and email. I spoke to HR at work, explained what had happened. My boss surprisingly understood. You don't owe anyone your peace, she told me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a mug of coffee, writing out a plan. Not revenge, not yet. Just protection. Step 1. Cut all financial ties. Done. Step 2. Block all possible contact. Done. Step 3. Let the world see who he really is. And fate, as cruel as it can be, decided to help me with that last one. See, my father was a proud man. Proud in that broken, dangerous way. He'd always wanted to look like a provider, a good man who fell on hard times. He loved posting photos of his dinners, steaks I'd bought, and his new tools, gifts I'd sent, claiming he worked hard for them. So I used his own pride against him. I logged into the social account he'd once begged me to set up for him. He didn't know how to change the recovery email. It was still mine. And with trembling fingers I posted screenshots of his messages. The ones where he demanded money, insulted me, threatened me. No captions. Just proof. Within hours, people from his church, his friends, even old coworkers started commenting. This isn't right. You said she abandoned you. Guess that wasn't the truth. By morning his account was gone. Deleted. And by evening he called from a new number. His voice was shaking, not angry, not loud. Just scared. What did you do, Ava? I let the silence stretch. Then I said softly, I stopped pretending you were the victim. He didn't speak for a while. Just shallow breathing, like he was trying to find the right words. Finally he said, You think this makes you strong? No, I whispered. It makes me free. I hung up. That night, for the first time since I was a kid, I slept without fear. But somewhere deep down I knew it wasn't over. Because men like him don't crumble quietly. And when they fall, they always try to drag someone down with them. You know that sound when glass cracks? Not all at once but slowly, painfully, until the whole thing shatters? That's what my father's life started to sound like. After his social account vanished, words spread faster than I imagined. The same people who once pitied him, the ones who brought him casseroles, helped him fix his car or lent him money, suddenly stopped answering his calls. I heard about it from my aunt first. He's been telling people you're lying, she said. But Ava, they've seen the screenshots. Nobody believes him anymore. I didn't respond. I just stared at the city lights outside my window. 1,000 tiny stars made of electricity glowing in the distance. Somewhere down there, my father was learning what it felt like to be unheard. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was something quieter. A release. But karma has a strange sense of timing. One afternoon while I was at work, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer. But something, maybe instinct, made me pick up. Miss Parker, a voice said. This is Officer Reynolds with the 4th Precinct. Do you know a Mr. Daniel Parker? My stomach sank. Yes, he's my father. There's been an incident. Nothing serious. He was picked up for trespassing outside an apartment complex. Says he was there to check on his daughter. My blood ran cold. He was at my building? Yes, ma'am. We've warned him to stay away. We suggest you file a restraining order if this continues. I thanked the officer, hung up, and sat frozen for a long time. My hands were shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. That was the night I stopped being afraid. The next morning I went to the courthouse and filed for the restraining order. It was approved within the week. When I walked out, papers in hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not over him but over myself. A few days later I heard from my aunt again. He's losing it, Ava. They're evicting him. He's blaming you for everything. Says you ruined his reputation. I wanted to say something kind. To offer mercy. But then I remembered all the years he'd taken my kindness and used it like a leash. So instead I said softly, maybe it's time he learns how to stand without me. March turned into April. I didn't hear from him again. Not a call. Not a text. It was like he'd evaporated from my life. Then one evening as I was closing up my laptop, an email notification appeared. The sender's name made my heart stutter. Daniel Parker. The subject line read, Final word. My hands hovered over the mouse. For a long time I just stared. And then I clicked. Ava. You've made your point. You've destroyed everything I had. I hope you're proud. But just remember. One day when you're old and alone you'll remember this. You'll remember the father you abandoned. No apology. No remorse. Just blame wrapped in guilt. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't even reply. I dragged the email to trash and whispered, "I didn't abandon you, Dad. You left me a long time ago." And as the digital sound of deletion echoed through my room, I realized something beautiful. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just peace. But peace doesn't last forever. Because the universe has one more twist to deliver. And it came in the form of a call from a stranger, holding something my father had left behind. Asterisk. The call came on a rainy Thursday. The kind of day that smells like old memories, damp pavement, cold coffee, and ghosts you thought you buried. "Hi, is this Ava Parker?" the voice asked. "Yes." "Who's calling?" "My name's Mark. I'm the building manager at Willow Creek Apartments. I believe you're listed as an emergency contact for a Daniel Parker." My heart clenched. "What happened?" He hesitated, voice softening. "Your father, he's fine physically. But he's being evicted. He left some personal items behind, including a box with your name on it. We weren't sure what to do with it." For a moment I couldn't speak. A box with my name on it. After everything, he still left me something. "I'll come by tomorrow," I said quietly. That night I barely slept. My mind kept replaying every version of him I'd known. The father who tucked me in after thunderstorms, the man who slammed doors when he drank, the voice that once said, "You're all I've got, kid." The next morning I drove to the old building. The hallway smelled like cigarette smoke and loneliness. When I reached his apartment, the door was open. The inside stripped bare except for one corner. A small cardboard box sat on the floor. My name scrawled across the top in his messy handwriting. I knelt down and opened it. Inside were old photos. Me at 5, grinning with missing teeth. Me at my high school graduation, him standing stiff beside me. Then beneath the photos, a worn-out leather wallet and a folded letter. The handwriting was shaky, but it was his. "Ava, if you're reading this, I guess I couldn't fix what I broke. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I always loved you, even when I was too proud to say it. Your mom used to tell me that love without respect is poison. I didn't understand that until you stopped answering my calls. I'm sorry I made you carry my failures. You deserved better than a man who made you his safety net. Don't come find me. Just live. That's all I ever wanted, even if I was too bitter to admit it. Dad." I stared at the paper until the words blurred. For a long time I sat there on the floor of that empty apartment, surrounded by everything he'd lost, and everything he'd finally confessed. It wasn't redemption. It was too late for that. But it was truth. And truth, even when it comes from the broken, has weight. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it into my purse, and stood up. On my way out, I handed the building manager a check for 1 month's rent. "For whoever takes this place next," I said. As I drove away, rain streaked across the windshield like tears I wasn't ready to shed. I realized that revenge hadn't destroyed him. Life had. I just stopped cushioning his fall. But deep inside there was something else. Not forgiveness, not love, but peace shaped like closure. Still, fate wasn't quite done with me. Because 1 week later a letter arrived in the mail, postmarked from a shelter 2 states away. And it wasn't from my father. It was from someone who knew him. The envelope was plain, no return address, just my name written in a careful, unfamiliar hand. I almost didn't open it. I'd promised myself that chapter was over. But something about the shaky handwriting, the faint scent of smoke and rain, made me pause. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Dear Ava, my name is Maria. I work at St. Clair's shelter in Indiana. I hope this reaches you safely. Your father stayed here for a few weeks. He spoke about you often, not the way you might expect. He said he'd lost the best person in his life because he never learned how to say thank you. He didn't ask for money. He never asked for pity. He just asked if we could help him write a letter he was too proud to send himself. I found it after he left. I think it's meant for you." A smaller envelope was taped inside. My hands trembled as I tore it open. "Ava, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, and maybe you shouldn't. You were my anchor, and instead of being grateful, I drowned you. I told myself I deserved your help because I was your father. But the truth is, I was just a man terrified of being irrelevant. You grew stronger, and I mistook your strength for rejection. I know you think I hated you, but the truth is worse. I hated myself for needing you so much. If life gives me one more chance, I'll spend it learning how to stand without you. Don't come find me. Just remember, Not all who leave you meant to break you. Sometimes they're just too broken to stay. Dad. By the time I finished reading, the paper was damp in my hands. My chest ached, not from grief, but from the slow release of years of pain I hadn't realized I was still carrying. I sat on my couch staring at nothing, the city humming quietly outside my window, and for the first time I thought about him not as a villain but as a man. A small, angry man who never learned how to be loved without control. And that's when I realized something I hadn't expected. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about balance. I didn't ruin him. I simply stopped saving him. And when you take away the person someone uses as their crutch, they're left standing on their truth. Or falling under it. I folded both letters, tucked them in a drawer, and whispered into the stillness, "Goodbye, Dad." Outside it started to snow, the same slow, heavy flakes that fell the night he called me pathetic. Only this time they didn't sting. This time I wasn't that girl anymore. I was free. But as I watched the snow melt against the glass, one last thought lingered. Not bitter, not angry, just calm. If love without respect is poison, then letting go is the antidote. And that was the truth he finally gave me.